Teacher Mason.
Hello, teacher Jason. How are you?
Met, I bet, I won't let you forget, forgotten, I gotten.
You finally did it.
Yeah, we finally did it.
This time, I didn't forget. I was dutifully waiting for you to send me the link.
Really?
But
Okay.
anyway,
Yeah,
I understand if you were worried that I've forgotten. Don't worry, I know.
nice. Because of this environment that I created, like a small home studio. That is why it
Uh-huh.
takes a couple of minutes to just set up and get ready. That's why actually I ask people like 1 hour before whether
Right.
maybe
Yeah,
they
yeah.
can, forget it, or I don't know, something
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
happens.
But it's
Cool.
funny. You must be living very well if you call that a small work area. It looks like a luxury apartment. It's amazing.
Actually,
Wow. So if that's small, you're used to like something, just out of this galaxy or something.
no,
You know?
actually, this is a picture. This is a picture like the virtual background that the Zoom
I
has.
know. I'm just joking. Of course I know. So
Sure.
good. Good
Cool,
to
cool.
meet you finally. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Likewise, likewise.
Pleasure. Pleasure, man.
My pleasure, man. Okay, so without losing any time, let's just dive into
Yeah.
the
Let's
questions.
go. Let's get into it. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. So, teacher Jason, speaking of
Yes.
motivation, how can we motivate language learners?
Well, I think there are a lot of different ways to approach this question. I think it's possibly the most important question of all because, it doesn't really matter how much you know about, second language acquisition, linguistics, or, lesson planning, or, how people learn if you don't understand how your particular students will be most motivated. So, there's a lot to be said about the age of the students, the culture of the students, their needs for learning English, lots of things. So, but I think the best way I can help other teachers with this question is to look at what I believe is the most common reason why students are not motivated across the board: age, culture, level of English, personality, everything. And that is, to give you an example, let's imagine, hypothetically, a teacher who has an activity that he or she really believes that the students will be motivated to do. They'll be excited about this activity, and that's because this teacher has thought carefully about, let's say it's a woman, her students' needs, these things I just mentioned, these variables, their
Yeah.
age, their interests, and all of these things, right?
Mhm.
Yet the activity doesn't go well. The students do not seem very motivated to do it. And out of class, they don't seem very motivated to do activities that she's suggesting or giving them to do. In many, many, many cases, not all, but many cases, the reason has to do with students not having had enough practice with the target language. So what I mean is, if you have an activity that you think is great, it might be great, but if the students to succeed in that activity, whether it's in class or out of class, have to put in an effort to, what does that word mean? And do I have to check the book? And, if they don't have that language, ready to go, like basically, automatized, it has to pop out. That's what I would say. If it doesn't pop out, if they have to check the board, if they have to check the book, if they're translating, then it's not a natural activity. This is true of anything we do. If it's not fluent, now the student doesn't have to be fluent. I'm not talking about the student's fluency, but if the activity doesn't feel fluid is the better word, right? If it doesn't flow, that's usually because the student does not have that target language from the activity, ready to use. What that means is not that the teacher has to get that student to practice English for the activity. It means that student or those students need to be outside of class getting the exposure, the repetition with that vocabulary, with that grammar, so that they arrive at class And when the activity comes, oh, this is kind of fun, you know. Then, you know, maybe some activities are more fun because of the age or because of the, but generally speaking, this is the problem I see again and again and again and again. So the bad news is that, you know, getting students motivated to practice, what I mean by that is not motivated for the activity. That's not practice for me, that's performance. The activity is performance, or outside of class using English, that's performance. Practice, like practicing the piano, practicing a dance, that's repetition, okay? That's, you know, playing the same piano piece many times. That's learning the dance, making mistakes. That's what has to happen. So, as you know, I make songs.
It's called Stick, Stuck, Stuck. What's the name of this song? Stick, Stuck, Stuck. Say yeah. Oh yeah.
But maybe not everybody who's watching knows. Why do I make those songs? It's not for the classroom activity. It's for the repetition of the song so that those grammar structures, those vocabulary words get stuck up here. So when you're doing the activity, and this is why I originally made these songs for my students. So in the classroom, you do activities. They go, oh, I remember that irregular verb. I remember the word order. I remember that vocabulary for, you know, restaurants or whatever. You know, that getting enough repetitive practice, and that does not mean the teacher should be, okay, leading drills and everyone's repeating. On the contrary, it's out of class. It's a flipped classroom. It's, you know, that's what has to happen outside. So in the classroom, the meaningful communicative activity can take place. So it's a long answer, but and I'm not saying that's the reason why there's a problem with motivation all the time. But again and again, in my work training teachers, in my work visiting schools around the world, this is what I've noticed, and this is what continues to motivate me to make practice material, songs, games, things students want to do again, play again. Because without that again and again, the activity is going to be too much work and they will lose motivation. Or going out to speak English, no, I'm not ready. You know, that often is because they don't have the language they need to succeed.
Fantastic, very good. Okay, speaking of, you know, different learners, what is the difference between young learners and adults?
In the sense that we're talking right now about motivation
Generally
and
speaking,
language learning?
Yeah, generally speaking, in terms of everything.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll go. I think there are a lot of differences, but let me hone in on one because we're already kind of talking about it. And again, I think it's probably the most significant. And that is that let's start with the premise that to learn a language, everybody needs repeated exposure, right? So to remember a vocabulary word, and you often see this, you know, you need to see the word 7 times, or you need to hear the word 7 times. You know, knowing what the word means is not the same as knowing the word. Yeah. As a, you know, there's receptive knowledge and there's productive knowledge, right? There's, you know, you can understand it, but right? Okay. So if we agree that comes not from, you know, just being super smart or great memory, you know, look at the word once, you have it the rest of your life. It doesn't work like that for most of us. We need repetition. Okay. So if we start with that premise and we look at kids, well, what happens when you're a kid? You naturally want to repeat things, you know, play the same song again, read the story again. Let's play the stupid game again. Like, you know, turn it on, turn it off, put it on, take it off, put it down, pick it up, more, you know, you can do that with little kids. Why are they asking to repeat? Because it's instinctive to repeat. They need to learn the language. You need the repetition. So as an adult learner, it's not that you stop needing the repetition. It's that our brains become more developed. We're analyzing. Okay, I understand the word. I'm done. You know, what's the next word? You know, what's the next grammar level? But what's not happening is they're not getting that exposure. Back to what I was saying, the practice, the repetition that kids normally do instinctively. We have to figure out not how to teach adults so they don't have to repeat, but instead find things that adults do like to repeat. So not doing kids games with adults, right? Not doing kids songs with adults, but finding games, songs, short videos, drama, whatever it is, where that repetition's coming. watching the same YouTube videos because it's interesting to repeat them. This kind of thing. Something has to happen where they get that repetition and along with that, kids, because they haven't developed higher order thinking, because they don't have analytical thinking. They're actually, it's the paradox, right? They can learn the language better usually because they're just acquiring it. Whereas an adult would be like, is this phrasal verb, is this a preposition or an adverbial particle? This usually interferes with acquisition of the language. So I think it's also turning off the analytical brain, not disregarding it, but there's a time and place to ask about grammar, to talk about, grammar, and grammar is just one example, or pronunciation. Where do I put my tongue or my teeth? And there's a time where you just do it and you get the repetition with it. So that's the first things that I think about with young learners and adults.
Very good. Of course, that is quite correct. And the next question is, what are the probable problems of students while they are studying and learning?
I like this question, but can you be a little more specific? Because I feel like there's so many ways to think about that. When you say problems, what do you mean?
Distractions maybe, or let's say, I don't know, complaints maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, again, I really think it's back to motivation. I think sorry to keep coming back to this, but this happens to be central to my approach. But yeah, I do think many times if a student has an assignment from a teacher to do, let's say outside of class, and the student's not doing it, they feel distracted, they feel it's too difficult, many times again, I feel they don't have the base of the grammar and vocabulary to do it. So I see it all the time. I see, a teacher giving an English assignment that requires the student to really think at a higher level. This is a good thing. I don't want to go back in time and just have, assignments be repeating sentences in a book. But the problem is, if the student is expected to kind of use English before they really, to think or to write an essay, it's going to be too much work. It's going to be too difficult if they don't have that very, basic base of grammar and vocabulary, right? And we see this all the time. And, we see students who, if you give them, a gap fill, test of, present simple, present continuous, or past simple, present perfect, they might be able to do it, but they've learned kind of how to do it that way. As far as expressing their own thoughts, written, spoken, they often don't have that fluency to do it, and so it's very difficult work. So again, I would say that problems that come up like that, the best possible situation is when you kind of hold off, if possible, on giving students assignments where they really have to produce a lot, and make sure before they're producing, whether you're not calling on them in class to present something or to submit some writing, that they really had enough practice with the language so that they're more encouraged to do it. And let me just say last thing about this, because it connects to your previous question about young learners. The best way to do this naturally, I mean, the reason we struggle with this with learners in middle school and high school and beyond is when they don't get English when they're younger. So, if I see this all the time. So if I'm in a country, so I travel a lot and I meet a lot of teachers and students. If I'm in a country where, at the primary school level, the students are getting a lot of English. That English at the primary school level comes in the form of that practice we're talking about usually, right? It's repeating, it's games, it's songs. So if they're getting that at the primary level, then they arrive at middle school and high school, then usually you can give them things to build on that foundation. But if you're meeting students in middle school and they don't have the basics, but you're giving them material that is more asking them to think and be creative in English, it's not going to work. And you're going to have a lot of problems.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay, very cliche question again. What sort of material would you recommend them to use, like books, apps, websites, or any specific platforms? I don't know, digital learning, digital platforms, any.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you mean learners or you mean learners, students?
Learners, yeah.
And what age group, Mesam, are you just thinking generally?
Generally,
Um,
I prefer adults, but
okay.
it is up
Yeah.
to you. You can,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I used to recommend certain apps. What I've discovered that's better than that for a lot of people is, I mean, if you can find an app that really hooks you, like you just have to get on that app, not because you want to learn English, but because you just love that app,
Mhm.
then that's great. I don't see that happening with most language learning apps and teaching apps. Duolingo, sometimes that happens to some people, so that's nice, but there's not the kind of hook that we want. So games are a better hook. I mean, games can be sort of addictive.
Yeah.
So what I have noticed, I'll share with you. I mean, you might have another question coming where I could give the same answer. I don't know, but I'll give you the answer now, because this is one of the most important things I can share with people, which is the formula I have seen work the best, the most often now, and the best is, I'll say it and then I'll explain it a little bit. Getting hooked on a computer game in English,
Mhm.
not to learn English, but getting hooked on a computer game that requires English. So in other words, to play the game, to communicate with other people in the world about the game, right? You need a basic level of English. So it's not an English teaching game, it's a computer game, whether it's an action game, whether it's an adult game, it's a kid game. It's basically an English game. Okay, English language is important for the game. Okay, so if you get addicted to that game, like I have to beat the game, or I have to beat the people in this country I'm playing against, or I have to beat my friends, or I just want to get to this level, I want to have this much money, or I want to win this prize. Okay, you have these motivations, right? This motivation, not I have to learn English. Okay, so this is the recipe, right? If you get addicted to that game and you want to do better in the game, and you go to YouTube to watch tutorial videos, if you're addicted enough to that game and you start watching gamers talk about the game in English, where they explain how to play the game, how to win more money, how to get to this level, how to do this. If you want to play the game so much, then you will watch those videos, and you will watch those videos more than one time to catch what they're telling you to do.
Yeah.
I have seen this happen. And these tutorial videos, they are, of course, the people who made them didn't think about, learning English as another language. But these tutorial videos, in many ways, are the perfect type of English to get fluent, because it's usually, one or two people, maybe three, they're showing you the game, and the English is like, okay, first you go over there. No, don't do that. Okay, now you have to go around the corner. Okay, after you go into this room, then you need to go over here. It's conversational. Yeah. It's negative structures, questions, all the verb tenses, phrasal verbs. Like it's everything. Yeah. So I have seen students, Mesam, I have seen students, young and old, who have done this, and they didn't try to do it to learn English. Their motivation was the game. They also were interested in English, but this is very important. They're not like, I have to do this to improve my English. They do it because they want to do better at the game. But then by watching the same videos again and again, playing the same game again and again, that's that repetition. They're hearing that phrasal verb 10 times, right? We said we need to see it 10 times or 7 times. They're hearing the present perfect, right? They're getting all of that. I have seen incredible things from this. I have seen people with, almost no accent. I've seen people, with almost no grammar mistakes from this particular combination. So it doesn't have to be that. I know a student, an adult, who's really interested in diving, scuba diving, deep sea diving. So he got hooked on some podcast in English where they're talking about, going deep sea diving. And so he listens to it every week. He reads it every week. He watches it. He listens to it again. He watches them on YouTube. Same thing. He gets the English. I mean, his English going up so fast. So I think it's getting almost addicted to something in English. But again, not because you're trying to learn English as the first goal, but because your motivation is more, you want to do this activity and English comes as a result. That's what I would suggest.
Fantastic. Very good. Very cool. Okay. Grammar and vocabulary. Which one is important?
It's hot here. So I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm just having some ice banana milk because it's very hot here in Paris.
No problem. Be comfortable.
Sorry.
Yeah, don't mention it. Okay, so we have grammar and vocabulary. Which one is important and why? And how can learners improve their grammar and vocabulary?
I love this question. This is an easy one for me. I look at I'm a student of the lexical approach. So the lexical approach. The main tenet in the lexical approach is that language is, grammaticalized lexis, not lexicalized grammar, meaning that what's central to language is vocabulary, words, and grammar is the glue that connects it, right? So we can, express ideas with nouns and verbs and adjectives without the grammar, but we can't be precise, right? We can't, but the essence of language is vocabulary. So if you approach language teaching or learning grammar first, I think you're going to be in trouble, big trouble, okay? So I think, but if you approach vocabulary learning without looking at the grammar of words, you're going to be in trouble. So a very good example of this is, gerund and infinitive complements, which most people would look at as grammar, right? So we say, I enjoy doing something. We don't say, I enjoy to do, right? But we say, I refused to go, not refused going, right? How do you know which is which? Well, a lot of people say, well, that's a grammar issue and it's in a grammar syllabus or something. But the fact, of course, is that words have grammar, right? So, if you learn a word like refuse, you need to learn the grammar with refuse. In this case, it takes an infinitive complement. If another verb, a word like make, make someone do something, not to do something, right? Or even, just verbs plus prepositions. Is it listen music or listen to music, right? So this is all grammar of words grammar. It's not syntax as much. So if we look at grammar and we separate syntax, sentence level grammar from word grammar, sentence level grammar is a very small part of grammar. It's important. Word order, right? And verb tenses. Okay, maybe it's not that small when we think about verb tenses, but we really have to understand that when students say, oh, my grammar is bad, many times it's word grammar. They just didn't learn the vocabulary with the grammar together. Learn collocations. That's the lexical approach. Collocations. Which words go together is not just which, adjective and noun. Prepositions. You don't separate these things. If you learn vocabulary with the grammar of the words, so you focus on word grammar, that's the way to learn vocabulary. When you go to grammar, if you're doing verb tenses and things like that, you also need to look at vocabulary. What are the time words? The main way, if we look at verb tenses, like present perfect, it's, I haven't been there yet, or he's gone there already. You always have vocabulary. It's always there. It always connects. So first of all, don't think about them as separate things, grammar, vocabulary. Second of all, when you're learning vocabulary, think about chunking, collocations to learn your vocabulary, because you're going to be learning the grammar together. And the same with grammar. When you're learning grammar, thinking about the vocabulary that is in that it's usually used when you're using that type of verb tense or that type of sentence grammar.
Fantastic. Very nice. Exactly. And okay, very silly question to ask it from a native speaker, but how did you personally learn English?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think we need to ask that question more often because I think, there's this kind of feeling if you're not a native speaker that, native speakers it's just sort of this magic thing. They just have the language. And of course, that's not true. We have to think about how it happens. So, the reason I learned English the way I learned English as a native speaker, we need to, what happened? And I think what happened is the same way it happened, for you and him and her in their native languages. Lots and lots of repetition at an early age where you are not pushed to speak at first. There is a long period of listening and getting that repetition. The reason we need to think about this is as second language learners, it's not so different. What's different, of course, is the environment. So if you say, oh, well, it's not the same thing. I didn't grow up immersed in English like you did, Jason. You're a native speaker. That's true. But to learn English as a second language, we need to think of ways that you need to get that kind of repetition and exposures. Again, songs, games, videos. It still has to happen. It's not going to happen without the exposure, without the repetition. So, and without the mistakes. You need to make mistakes. So it's, how did I learn English? I learned English. Here's an example. I used my daughter when she was learning English as her first language. When she was 4 years old, she was at the kitchen table drawing with, making pictures, but, 4 years old, just kind of like this. And she said, Daddy, look, I'm making my homework. Right? So this is a great example. I have another example. I'll tell you two examples. So, I had, there are three things when I train teachers, I ask them. So I'll ask you, I'll put you on the spot, man. There are three ways I could respond to this. Can you tell me what is one way I could respond? Daddy, I'm making my homework.
So
what could I say?
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can directly correct her. I don't know.
Okay.
My correction.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's great. But we say doing homework. We don't say making homework. Okay, that's one way. Any other way? Without directly correcting her. So instead of saying, oh, we don't say that, we say this, I could just say, oh, you're doing your homework.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is just giving her the correction without saying, and this is similar to what ways of error correcting in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
But there's a third thing. There's a third thing that most people never say. But a third thing I could do is say nothing. I could just say, oh, that's great. Looks good. Mm-hmm. In other words, I don't correct her and I don't give her the correct collocation doing homework. Now, the very interesting thing, if you look at research with native speakers, like my daughter, this type of environment, right? Parents are native speakers. They're going to school with English everywhere, right? English everywhere, okay? When you look at research to look at language acquisition, what is the best response, right? Is it better for me to correct her, to tell her, a conscious thing, this is right, this is wrong? Is it better for me to just model the correct way without saying it's a correction or do nothing? And you know what the research shows, man? It doesn't matter what you do. It makes no difference. Do you know why it makes no difference? Because my daughter is going to hear do homework so many times in her life that she's not going to, it's not going to matter for her. Mm-hmm. This is what's different for somebody learning English as a second language, because they are not necessarily going to get that repetition. It's back to this idea. So what students need is to hear do homework, take the bus, miss the boat, whatever, enough times reading it, hearing it, seeing it, that they know what sounds right and sounds wrong, that they know that is what is key. So I think it's really important to understand how native speakers learn a language, that it is through repetition, it is through collocations. Nobody teaches you what take means. What does take mean? We don't teach our people what take means. We learn take my hand, take it easy, take a shower, we learn through collocations.
Yeah.
We don't learn definitions of words.
Mhm.
You know, we don't learn what a countable noun is and an uncountable noun is. You know, most of the things that learners find difficult to remember and understand, you know, countable, uncountable nouns, gerund infinitives, like we were saying, you know, these things are not taught in school. We never learn them consciously. You know, we only learn them if we're becoming linguists or English teachers,
Yeah.
you know, and that's because they are best learned through examples and repetition. They are not best learned through analyzing under a microscope and learning grammar rules.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, before moving to next question, I want to say, where are you originally from?
I'm originally from the United States, and I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. I grew up there and also in St. Louis, Missouri, in the Midwest. But much of my family was originally from New York. I went to college in New York and graduate school, and I lived in New York City for a long time before I moved to Paris, France. And I've been living here in Paris for about 7 years.
7 years. I see. Very good. Okay. It says here, is it possible to learn multiple languages at the same time, simultaneously? Or, and also, would you recommend that?
I don't think you mean as a child, like in a bilingual or trilingual environment. You mean as an adult.
As an adult, yeah, basically.
Yeah. You know, I think it goes back to motivation. So I would say certainly not if you feel somehow pressured to do it or obligated to do it, or you think it would be good for you to do it. You know, you got to really get rid of those feelings, you know, but if you feel some desire, you know, to do a little French, to do a little Japanese, to do a little Polish, that means that you're that type of person and you should go for it. You know, there are lots of, you know, second language, third language, fourth language learning polyglots, you know, who just, you know, I'm not one of them. I wish I were, but, you know, so I think it depends on the person. And, you know, you could say it depends on personality and intelligence. And, you know, some people learn languages better than others. I think that's true, but more often than not, it's not about that. It's about the motivation, being in the right place at the right time. Someone turns you on to this, you know, Polish singer, this, you know, Japanese anime, or whatever, you know, you just get motivated through chance and get into it. And then you should definitely go for it. Definitely.
Okay, cool. Of course. So how can learners improve their speaking abilities?
I mean, the only question that is as frequent as this is how can I be fluent in English, which I think is the same question.
Of course.
And I have to say, like, it's going to be hard to answer it without saying what I said before about motivation. So I'll just say, I'll try to make a little bit of a different answer, but let me just reiterate how strongly I believe in what I'm going to say, which is that if you feel like, you know, you're having trouble speaking, like, oh, you know, when I read, it's okay. Or, you know, when I listen, it's okay. But when I speak, I just can't write. 9 times out of 10, the reason that's happening is because when you are reading something or listening, again, this is more adults. Okay. So, and I think this question comes from adults, not kids usually. Okay. Yeah. It's the adult is, when they're reading and listening, they are decoding, they're analyzing, they're using their intelligence, they're using their cognitive abilities, okay, to a large extent. So they're succeeding with that. Speaking is not about cognitive analytical ability. It's about just releasing what you've got up here. When you are listening and reading and just using your ability to comprehend what you hear and comprehend what you read, if you think, well, if I can do that, why can't I speak? They're actually totally separate things. They're completely separate. So here's an example. If you want to speak better, be more fluent, and improve your speaking abilities, to your question, what could you do? For example, you could read material that is lower level than what you consider your reading level. Why? Because if you're reading something easier, you are not using your analytical brain. You are not trying to understand it. it's more likely that that grammar and that vocabulary will just naturally go into your subconscious.
Yeah. Cool.
Right? So, even a book for, 10-year-old children is going to have the present perfect in it. It's going to have passive structures. It's going to have phrasal verbs. It's going to have, reported speech, all that stuff that you're thinking, but if that's coming from the New York Times, you're not going to have it ready to speak with. Okay? It's true for everything. Watching movies for, younger kids, doing easier things, playing these games, computer games, YouTube tutorials, like what I was saying before, repeating things. This is what's going to get the grammar and vocabulary you need to produce when you speak. Then it's going to come out.
Yeah.
So you can't think that there's this relationship between, I know this much vocabulary and I know this much grammar and I understand this much when I listen, I understand this much when I read, why can't I speak? We're talking about two different things. So that's the most important thing, and it's back to that practice. You need repetition with it. And if you have repetition with collocations, it will pop out when you speak. It'll just come out.
Yeah.
So if you hear, could you help me? Could I ask you a question? Could you, enough times in a context that's easy, then when you're, outsider in the classroom, excuse me, but could you give me another piece, right? I mean, it comes from, the very basic repetition with the foundational grammar and vocabulary.
Yeah.
It has to happen if you want to speak.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Very nice. Oh my God. Accent and pronunciation. Which one actually outweighs the other one? I mean, as a student perspective, let's say I'm a student, which one should I start first? Or, I have to put much more importance on first, let's say. Should I focus on accent or should I focus on pronunciation? Which one?
Well, I think we need to differentiate between the two. To me, they're very related. I mean, pronunciation, everybody has an accent. An accent, you can't speak without an accent. So it's not working on your accent. If you mean by that a particular accent, like American or British or certain part of England or something like that, that can't be the first thing you do. Yeah. I mean, the first thing you need to do is make sure that what you say is understood by people. I mean, that's the most important. I would. Oh, sorry, but please clarify what you mean, maybe by accent.
Actually, no. Of course, the answer is very cliche, actually, and you answered it, perfectly. And so, American English or British English? I mean, which one should a student start with for the first time?
It's funny because
students come to us and they ask, which one should I, go for? Yeah.
I mean, this question had, I think, had more importance in the past than it does now for several reasons. I mean, in the past, and not very long ago, I mean, I've been teaching 22 years. So let's say, when I started teaching 20 years ago or 10 years ago even, I think it was more important. I mean, because in many cases, people were learning English to communicate with Americans mainly, or to communicate with British mainly. And that's really not the case anymore. So now I would say, if you are one of those people that is going to be working mainly with Americans or Australians or Brits or Canadians, then probably makes sense to be learning that dialect, that main regional dialect. But as we know, it's in that case, it makes no difference if you're learning, to me, Australian English, Canadian English, American English. You need English that's going to be understood when you can communicate well, and that it makes no difference at all. So I think then it's a case of, your personal preference, who your teachers are, where you are learning, and things like this. But, it's happening more and more that there are meetings, let's say like online video conferences where everybody's using English, but, it's Indian English, it's Chinese English, it's, it's English, it's Arabic English, it's English spoken by people from different countries. And, if you're British if you're a native speaker, you might not understand. You might be in the minority. I mean, that's the reality now. So to say you have to learn American or British, I mean, the next thing might be you need to learn, you know, a world English to be able to communicate with everybody else.
Exactly. Very nice. Exactly. And is it possible to learn English without going abroad?
Oh, yes. I mean, really, yes. So, and I will add, it is possible to go abroad and not learn English. You know, so
A big surprise, you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we understand this more and more now because of the internet, and because we have people who could never have enough money to live abroad, or not have the political privilege to live abroad, or whatever it is, who are learning English thanks to the internet. What we're seeing is, like I've been talking about this whole interview with you, the reason they are is they're just so motivated to repeat the same songs and the videos and the games that they are getting, you know, this. So, I mean, I could tell you story upon story upon story of people I have met, students, you know, whether it's, you know, a particular story, a 14-year-old girl in Poland, I could tell you a story, an 11-year-old boy in Spain, a 12-year-old girl here in France that have never lived abroad. And furthermore, you know, didn't have a parent at home that spoke English or friends who spoke English, none of that. But they got so into English, you know, through media, that they became highly fluent, you know, in a couple of cases, almost bilingual without ever living abroad.
Interesting. So it is possible, totally.
Of course. And it's also possible to go abroad, to not have enough exposure and repetition to basic English to get that foundation, and to survive with little English here and there, but basically, you know, you know, you never really get it.
Yeah, I see. Exactly. And okay, how long will it take for a person to really learn every necessary elements of language to speak it properly?
How long?
How long?
Yeah, that's an impossible question to answer. But you know, for the simple reason that we can't really, you know, quantify in terms of time. You know, it's, you know, those people I was just telling you about, without telling you their stories, but just that, you know, you need to just trust me that there are many cases I see of people achieving, you know, great levels of proficiency, the kind of thing that the person asking this question wants to know. How long did that take for that person in Poland, in Spain, in France, and the others, right? And the important thing is not so much how long it took, but the fact that it happened at all. Most people do not get that level. So, you know, you know, the question I think is not so much how long it takes, but, you know, what is the formula to get there? Because many people won't get there. So I think, you know, the more, it's really a question, just the more repetitive exposure you get to the language, the faster it will be. But it's not going to be, you know, if you're not motivated, it's not going to be, okay, I'm going to sit down and repeat and memorize these things. It's going to happen if you're naturally drawn and get kind of almost addicted to that English all the time, through videos, through songs, through talking to people online, through, you know, but it's really hard to measure by time. I understand why people ask that question, but I mean, think about it. If you apply that question, how long will it take for me to be this type of dancer or piano player or soccer player, football player? You know, you can't, with skills, when it's a skill. Language learning, like dance, like sports, like music, it's not something I think that really works with time.
Exactly. Yeah. And final question: technology and education. Do you think that the integration of these two, let's say, factors or elements again, can be a good idea or can be a harmful idea?
Well, the ways that it can be good are numerous. I think, you know, we see that right now with what you and I are doing. If someone's watching this video, getting advice from us and getting the English practice with us, and if they're lucky and they like the video enough to watch it 10 times, they're probably going to remember a lot more of the English from this, and that's technology, right? So right there. And if you include in technology, you know, CDs, tape recorders, language tapes, even books could be considered tech. I mean, it depends how you define it. But I think if we're talking about like the way technology is now and more of it coming in to education, I think the benefits are pretty obvious. And I've been talking about them a lot actually today. With the way you're able to get into media and repeat things and get that exposure. So what could be harmful? Let's talk about that. I think the only, well, I shouldn't say only, the first thing I'm thinking of that could be harmful is if teachers or learners believe that just because it's technology, it's their ticket to fluency or something. Oh, this app, you know, well, and it's back to the time thing. In 10 days, you will be fluent. 10 weeks, you know, or, you know, because, you know, it doesn't work like that. You know, so I think if technology can kind of fool you into thinking it's easier or it's better, it's not going to work like that. Like I said, I think the most simple, like I don't recommend apps as much as I used to because I found people don't get hooked on them as much. People get hooked on like Candy Crush Saga, you know, that you get addicted to. But that's what I'm talking about. What kinds of things with English do you feel a little bit like Candy Crush Saga? You know, whether it's watching this series, listening to this rapper, you know, playing this game, you know, whatever it is, this YouTuber, you know, what something that, you know, it gets you kind of like that's what has to happen. And that's technology to the extent that, you know, you can repeat things like watch the same video again, you know, listen to the same songs again more easily with your phone. And that's wonderful. But I think the harmful thing could be believing that, you know, technology in and of itself is going to somehow make your English come faster or be better.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, sir. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Great questions.
Thank you. Great answers, by the way.
Okay. Well, I'm glad.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
My
I'm glad we
invitation.
finally had. Oh, well, thank you. And thanks for this chance to reach your followers and we keep in touch, man. We can do something again and let me know when you publish this and I can help you promote it and it'd be great.
Hopefully, man. Hopefully. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good.
And of course, for your time, which is pretty valuable and precious.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for your patience too.
My pleasure, sir. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much again.
Take care, man.
Take care of yourself.
Have fun in your palatial suite. Let me get a cocktail from the bar. Is that the bar over there?
Thank you.
It looks great. You have a pool? I think there might be a pool.
Sure.
All right.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much.
Take care. Okay.
Take care of yourself.
See you. Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
See you soon, man. Bye-bye. Take care.